But first of all, I want to say hello and thank you all so much for joining us for today's program, Contemporary Photographic Documentation of America's Historic Architecture. My name is Melissa Loriano, and I serve as the Programs Associate for the DC Preservation League. For those of you who might be new to the DC Preservation League, our organization has been dedicated to preserving and protecting the historic and built environment of Washington, DC since 1971. So before we officially get started, I just wanted to share a few brief technical notes about how today's program is going to work. So first, please use the Q&A chat box to ask any questions of our presenter. I will collect all of your questions and verbally ask them to our presenters at the conclusion of the program. We will have some time allotted for a Q&A session at the end. If we don't get to everybody's questions today, you can always email us at info@dcpreservation.org, and we can pass them along to our presenters. Any questions that are in the chat box that we don't get to, I will also make a note of those and who asked them and get those answers to you guys as well. And for those joining us on Facebook Live, my colleague Jessica Unger, our Outreach and Grants Manager, she will be monitoring any questions that you all might have on Facebook and pass them along to me as well. So I'm so pleased to introduce you all to today's speakers. First, we have Jarob Ortiz. In 2016, Jarob was selected out of a field of over 4,000 applicants to serve as the Heritage Documentation Program's photographer. Since then, he has produced more than 3,000 large format views, all archived at the Library of Congress and serving as public record. He specializes in architectural and industrial photography and loves the technical challenges associated with recording historic structures. Jarob was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and attended the Milwaukee Area Technical College, earning an associate in applied science and photography. He now works out of Washington, D.C. Next, we have Paul Davidson. He is an architect for the Historic American Building Survey, or HABS, at the National Park Service. He has 18 years of experience documenting historic structures throughout the country with HABS. His projects utilize hand measuring, 3D laser scanning, photogrammetry, total station GPS, and high dynamic range panoramic photography to produce archival records of historic structures. Paul holds a Bachelor of Architecture and Certificate of Preservation from Pratt Institute, along with extensive formal training in remote sensing and civil survey. His notable projects include the Ghazni Towers in Afghanistan, the Statue of Liberty in Ellis Island in New York City, Cape Hatteras Lighthouse in North Carolina, and Alcatraz Island in California, and Fort Jefferson in Florida. So with that, I will turn this first part of the presentation over to Jarob.
Thank you very much, Melissa, and hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to the presentation. My name is Jarob Ortiz. I am the large format photographer for the Heritage Documentation Programs, HABS, HAER, HALS, the National Park Service. I know Melissa did a quick introduction for me, but just a little bit more background. Born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Loved it there, but joined the military immediately after school, did a 6-year stint in the Air Force, which took me all the way up to Alaska and all the way down to Florida and everywhere in between. It was a wild ride. But once I got out, I discovered photography through a friend and just really got into it. That was in about 2009. And through that process, I learned about the view camera and decided to go to school for it. And after school, I worked as a freelance architectural and commercial photographer. I did a lot of work with printing, color management for companies too. But ultimately, all that hard work in the private sector paid off when it came time, because here I am with this fantastic job with the Heritage Documentation Programs, and I cannot complain. This right here is just a photo of our building. We are located in Washington, D.C., as Melissa had explained. Right there is our website for anybody that would like to go there and check things out. A little bit about the program. It's constructed of three segments. It's the Historic American Building Survey, HABS, the Historic American Engineering Record, HAER, and Historic American Landscape Surveys, HALS. Those are the three programs that really bring this all together and make HDP, Heritage Documentation Programs. Those three programs then come together to create our collection, which is housed at the Library of Congress. It's been administered since 1933 through the NPS, Library of Congress, and the private sector. Consists of hundreds of thousands of measured drawings and large formats, large format photographs and written histories. Serves as permanent record for all of the most important historic sites around the country and large-scale objects. And it's really important that everybody knows about this, but the collection is 100% open to the public. You can go to the website that I have listed here at the bottom of the page and browse through the collection, and anything on there you can access, you can download, you can get really high resolution copies of all the work that we're doing there, and I think it's a really good resource for people. Here is a quick example of some of the drawings that we produce in the program. This is of the White House. This was produced during the HABS White House projects from 1988 to 1992. As you can see, there's the cover page on top. On the left side, you have a details page showing, trims and door details and all the dimensions. On the right side, we have a general landscape view around the White House. And then on the bottom, we have an elevation. My area of expertise is right here, the large format photography. This is what I love. Really is a unique approach to photography, lots of rules, lots of knowledge that you just have to follow. This here is the camera that makes up large format photography, traditional large format photography, as in film, analog photography. This is still what we're doing at the National Park Service. Here we have in both photos is a 5x7 view camera. Basically, you can manipulate this camera into ways that will allow you to photograph structures and objects with correct perspective. And by that, I mean the lines of your building going up and down, up here, up and down. You can also manipulate the camera to make lines that are going left to right look straight on the camera. It's all about perspective correction with this camera and producing really high resolution, high-end products for our clients and sponsors for these projects. Also, the high resolution allows us to extract a lot of detail out of these images should we need to do so for any reason at all. But like I said, it is a very technical system, and I mean, if you're going to pick one of these up, there are plenty of books. Get in touch with me. I can recommend a whole bunch of them for you. Coupled with the camera system, we also have to take the lighting equipment. Everybody always thinks it's just as simple as showing up and pressing a shutter button, but it's not. It's just simply the film cannot capture detail over a wide range of light. So by that I mean pure black to pure white. The film just cannot do it. So because of that, we need to bring our lighting equipment. In these photos here, I would say that this is quite a bit. I usually take a lot just because I always want to be more prepared than that. But realistically, you could get away doing this kind of work with, you know, maybe about half of this equipment. But I just like to be really prepared in case anything breaks or anything, because we have to go out across the country to all these locations, some of them remote. And if something breaks, you just don't have any other option. So I take it with me, all of it. And I think it's weighed in at about 400 plus pounds. It's crazy, but it has to be done. That's the process. That's large format photography. Also, with large format photography, that notebook down on the bottom is very important because you need that in order to calculate every single exposure you do. Every single exposure must be calculated to ensure that every last bit of detail is captured in the shadows and the highlights. If you can do it in your head, then you don't need it. I cannot do it in my head, so that notebook goes with me everywhere, as does the light meter to the right of the notebook. Can't measure your lights and set up those lighting ratios without that. And the last part of this puzzle for the large format photography is the film itself. Right now, we are accepting, or always have accepted, the black and white negative and color transparency only. No color negative film. There was a reason that the Library of Congress gave me for that, but I cannot remember it off the top of my head. My apologies. I believe it has something to do with the mask on the film. Anyways, I digress. Acceptable formats are 4x5, 5x7, 8x10. I know they make 11x14. I'm sure the library would take it, but that's a lot of equipment. And so is an 8x10 camera. I've used one before. The resolution is fantastic, but it's just a very, very heavy system. And the 4x5 is nice, but I don't really. It's light and it moves around nice, but it doesn't have as much resolution as I would like. And also, personally, I like the 5x7 because of the way that it reads with architecture. I think it just reads better compositionally. So 5x7 is my choice. The general type, I'm going to go through some of these photographs, some of the photographs that we're looking for at the National Park Service when doing this kind of work. Typically, you want to go into it and get general exterior views and contextual views like you see here. The photo on the left is definitely a contextual view where you can see other buildings around that kind of give you an idea of the land, or like where the location is, how the whole area around that structure reads. That's a perfect example of one. The center photograph is more of an elevation shot, showing you just the straight on. I mean, there's some context there, but I would definitely consider that more of a straight on shot of an elevation. And the photo on the right is a contextual shot as well, but with a little bit more fun as it's showing a HABS team that was on that project. We also are looking for the exterior details. What aspects what aspects of the structure are unique? As you can see here with the photo on the left, the brickwork is amazing. The archway is amazing, but the mosaic above the doorway and the trim around the doorway was where it's at. Really fantastic piece of architecture, the reptile house, or the Reptile Discovery Center, sorry, uh, Smithsonian Zoo in Washington, D.C. Um, Again, here, if you look at the middle photo, we're looking at the detail, really unique, around the windows, um, the columns, it's just fantastic. And on the right there, the detail is the original stair posts for the construction of the Washington Monument, which they discovered when they were putting in the new welcome or a visitor center on the front. I was pretty excited to get to photograph that one. We're also looking for general interior views. So just wide open, showing us how the space reads. And this is something that, should be brought up at this point, is that with this work, yes, you do get to do the grandiose like you see in the lower right and the upper left, but you also do the rustic as well, as you can see in the middle with the 10-man bunk at Camp Misty Mount. Or actually that's Camp Greentop, sorry, in Maryland at Catoctin Mountain Park. You get a little bit of it all. It's not all glamour, but it's always fun. Then we're looking for the interior detail shots. Now, these can be a little bit different because you can shoot them. A detail shot doesn't need to be close up like the middle photograph, where you can see it's a brass door lever for a bathroom stall at Ellis Island. The detail on that is just amazing. But they don't have to be like that. You can open it up wide and take a more abstract shot to capture a lot of detail within one frame, because the resolution this system offers. When you look at the photograph on the left of the stairwell, there's so much detail there, so much interior detail of that stairwell. The railings, all the decorative pieces around the side there. It's amazing what you can extract out of this format when you zoom into this. We also do the photos for scale. As you can see, the photo on the right here, when you just look at it, you really don't have any idea how large or how small that elevator motor is. Bring in the scale stick over here, and now we have a better idea of it. And usually we ask, we recommend that at least 1 or 2 photos in a survey, if it's a comprehensive survey, will have a scale stick showing maybe how tall the main facade of a building is, or something like this. But then that brings us to this tricky subject. We are shooting large format, and that's what everybody who's doing this outside of our office, all the people around the country, the contractors and everything doing this work, the people that are volunteering work, they're doing it on large format. We're still doing some work on large format too, but we are beginning to transition to digital. We are using 2 systems at the moment for our process. One is it's actually a 42 megapixel mirrorless system. The Sony A7R III, and we're actually fixing Canon tilt shift lenses to the front of this camera so that we are able to correct for perspective with this particular camera. That's what you can see on the front of it there, that lens that's kind of tilting down. which I was only using that because the tilt function is good for focus on landscapes, and I was photographing a golf course there, as you can see by my magnificent little cart back there, my little chariot, I called it. That is basically our lowest tier that we're currently experimenting with in terms of acceptable. 40 megapixels right now we have set in our draft guidelines as the lowest tier we'll accept. On the right side over here is our other system. It's basically the digital version of large format photography. This is a phase 1 digital back, 100 megapixels on a technical camera, digital technical camera. I believe it's 6x9 technical camera, and still using the same kind of view camera lenses that we were using before, just ones that are honed for digital. And yeah, that's basically the highest end, the opposite end of the spectrum from this. And the reason why we're doing that is to see what is it that you're actually getting from the high-end system. How does it affect the workflow? How does it affect the final product? Maybe there's some situations where one system is better than the other and vice versa. So these are the two systems we're currently working with, and we did just upgrade that 100 megapixel digital back to a 150, mainly because the technology improved, where they took the sensor out of that Sony camera, made it larger, and put it into that digital back. Sony has revolutionized digital photography with their sensor technology. It's amazing. So here we can see, this is one of the big reasons why I'm stoked about this digital transition, is because of the resolution we're getting out of this camera, out of this system. This is the 100 megapixel phase 1 trichromatic back. On the right, you see a full, the full image. I mean, that's way, it's obviously shrunken down and whatnot. On the left side here, this is a true 100% sample in Photoshop from that photo. So it's not been manipulated at all. It's just, I just cropped it out and there it is. That's exactly what it looks like. It's amazing how sharp it is right out of the camera, and what we're able to capture in terms of the bright whites and the dark blacks, which is what I'm talking about with this particular slide, is the latitude we're getting out of this. The photograph on the left was taken in 1993 on a 5x7 camera without any kind of off-camera flash or light. Just, it's all ambient light. Look at the photo on the right here. This is a photo that I did just this past, or no, in April or March of 2019. Exact same conditions, no flashes or anything. It's all ambient light, and look at how much more detail we're able to extract out of that image. This is what we're talking about. It just makes the whole process a lot easier. And the other part about it is too, which I should have put in here, was color. That totally slipped my mind, is that the kind of color accuracy we're able to get with this digital system, it's far more accurate than anything that color transparency could ever produce, in my opinion. You can tune it, fine tune it right on the spot using like software and calibration swashes and whatnot. It's just completely, it's much better avenue than using any kind of color transparency. So now basically we're going to be using the collection is going to be going into color here going forward moving away from a black and white collection into a color collection. And now I know that through this, I've shown mostly photographs of just buildings, but when you're thinking about the documentation process, think outside the box a little bit here, because it's, like I said, you know, a lot of people think about HABS, but HAER and HALS are there too. So it's like when you're doing a documentation project, bridges, dams, mines, ships, and even myself, I've been thinking about this lately in terms of HAER and the engineering record, in like processes, documenting certain historic processes. I wonder if that would fall under the category. I've never really asked the question, but it's something that I want to bring up soon with those above me, and maybe brainstorm some ideas about that. Also with photography, when you're thinking outside the box, there's another aspect of it, and it's not doing photography the way that I'm doing it here. It's the way the architects are using it and doing a process called photogrammetry and creating panoramic views. And to discuss that further, my coworker Paul Davidson, HDP architect, will walk you through it all. Thank you so much.
Jarob, real quick, we had a question about some of the sites that you showed, if you can just like maybe identify some of them.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it was the, so somebody from Facebook just wanted to know about the first three. So the Gothic Revival House and the HABS team on the roof, and the other one in that group, like just the first three, I guess.
So here we go. That would be slide 11. So the Gothic Revival House it's right there. If you see slide 11, photo 2, main south elevation, Timothy Kopp House, up in New York. Jack Bauscher, the photographer that worked for us for 40 plus, almost 50 years, took that photo back in '65. And what was the other?
And then she said like the other one in that group, she didn't really specify that one. Maybe it was just the third photo then.
Yeah, that's that's a view of the National Home for Disabled Volunteer Soldiers in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Okay, great. Well, that was it. Well, thank you so much, Jarob, and I'll let you pass it along. Thanks.
All right, I guess I'm up. I'm gonna get this going. There's my email. That's not correct. There we go. All right, here we go. Photography part 2. This time it's personal. Or we could go with this title. I just thought it was a little wordy. We'll focus group that at the end. So Jarob showed some examples of measure drawings, and there's a lot of information and sources of information that we need to create those drawings. We have laser scan data, of course, represented by a moose, photogrammetry and field photographs. We might have total station and GPS data, and hand measuring and field notes. And then we'll also rely on historic drawings, images, and research. And to balance the whole slide off, we just have a cat. Now I know a lot of people are going to be angry about this, so there's a dog as well. So I'm going to talk about today 2 technologies that we use to survey buildings that include photography in the process. So we have photogrammetry, and that's a camera up there. and terrestrial laser scanning. And that behind this tripod is our acting HDP chief, Dana Lockett. And with their powers combined, they are Scanley Laserton III. So I don't have the appropriate accent to explain how a laser scanner works, so this guy from Leica is going to do it for me. Bear with it.
A laser scanner emits a rapidly pulsing or continuous laser beam. As it emits the beam, the scanner automatically rotates around its vertical axis, and a rapidly spinning or oscillating mirror also moves the beam up and down. The result is a systematic sweeping of the beam over the area. When the beam hits an object, some of its energy bounces back to the scanner, where if the returned energy signal is strong enough, a sensor detects it. The resulting scan is a set of 3D coordinate measurements.
It's a detailed 3D representation of the scene, often called a point cloud.
And to add realistic texture or color to scans, matching photos can be taken.
There you go. Now that's about everything you need to know, except for what he's describing is the collection of data from a single position. And if I set a scanner up, and this would be looking in a top-down or plan view, and I scan a group of objects, I can't scan what the scanner can't see or bounce light off of. So that's called scan shadow. And to mitigate scan shadow, I have to set up multiple positions in order to get an entire model. And it's almost impossible to get 100%, but we try to get as much as we can. And that's going to be true in an elevation situation as well. If we place a scanner and scan the front facade, we won't get any of the roof data. So we have to get a scanner up there to collect the other data that we're missing from the ground. And then we can just make it rain. So the video talked a little bit about color data, and it was showing you that green and yellow colored data was called intensity scale. And that's inherently in the scan data. If I send out a point from if a laser is sent from the scanner, it's at 100%, but some of that light will be absorbed by the surface. So it may only return 90% or 50%. And depending on how much is returned, it will color that data. And it does that in a scale. So here, the most intense return is green and the least intense is red. And then everything in between is scaled. And we can adjust and compress that scale. And that allows us to bring out detail like brick joints and like floorboards. And this is the data we draw and model from. We don't usually need the photo texture data, but the photo texture data is a better visual for interpretive products. Now there's two ways to collect that data. Like I said, you get the intensity data at the time you get the coordinate, but the photo texture comes in as a photograph after the fact. And what we can do is we can get that RGB or photo texture from the laser scanner. So it has a camera built in, and it's great at scanning, but it's got a not so great camera. And it takes a long time to collect that data, 7 to 12 minutes on top of the scan. And you just don't get the control you need. Plus a scanner, it may come out every 5 years. And in 5 years, a lot of camera technology will have changed. So we can upgrade our camera by using an external photo texturing method. So what we do is we place the camera on a special bracket in the same location as the scanner. It's at the same height. And we take a series of photos to build a pano, a 360 pano. In this case, we need 6 positions with the lens that we're using. So it just depends on what lens we have on there. So 6 positions would fill in the entire sphere that we need to collect to color the data from the scanner. Now we have to do this at every single position we scan, and we might scan hundreds of stations to get a complete model of a structure. and those are cameras. And what we do is high dynamic range panoramic photography. So the high dynamic range part is about taking an initial exposure at one of those views and then taking over and under exposures. So in this example, we're going 2 and 4 stops over and 2 and 4 stops under. And what we do is we take and blend those 5 exposures together, and that allows us to bring out all the detail in the highlights and in the shadows. So Jarob talks about bringing a lot of external lighting, and in some cases we need to do that, but not as much as he does, because we can use high dynamic range. So we can take, and we're on a tripod, so we can take multiple exposures to fill in all that detail. So the panorama part is to take those 6 positions. So here, these have already been, they're all high dynamic range images, so they've all been blended. So we take those 6 positions and they're seamed together into a full sphere. This is taking that sphere and unwrapping it onto a rectangle. This is called an equirectangular projection. And we can feed this into our software, and sometimes that will automatically map to the scan data, and sometimes we have to pick individual points. We have to say the corner of that window in the photograph is the corner of that window in the scan data, and get everything to align. And if you need any more, if you have any more questions about the photography part, you definitely want to ask this guy about that. So I talked about interpretive products, and one of those is a point cloud animation. So this is photo textured data. It's probably about 300 stations, many billions of points. And in this, we're defining a path through the model and then having a camera rendering each of those still frames into a video. We can also define a clip box, which allows me here to cut through the floors at different levels. So you can look at the inside of the building in ways you couldn't on site. What's great about this, it doesn't require a user to know how to navigate 3D space. They don't need special software. And I can control the view and make sure that the user is seeing the things that are significant about the structure. And another thing we can do is an interactive point cloud viewer. And these are hosted on our server. So I'm gonna have to jump out of PowerPoint, and hopefully you're all seeing this. And so this is a streaming point cloud viewer. This is just Google Chrome. All you need is a modern browser. And this is, we can't host the entire data set, which is many billions of points. This is about 10% of the data. And it's not showing all the points at once. And what it does is, as I zoom in, it will start to stream in points just for that area. So you're not getting bogged down with displaying the entire model at once. But this allows the user to freely go around the site and explore however they wish. Now they do have to know how to navigate 3D space with pan and zoom and orbit. So for some people, this isn't a great way to interact with the site, but it does include different tools, measurement for area and length and volume, as well as you can do the same thing with the clip boxes as well. So let me get back into PowerPoint. So of course, if we're making panos, I'm sure you're all familiar with pano tours. We can also create those from the panos that we're using to color our point cloud data. So I'll just jump into our most recent tour, which is the Statue of Liberty. And like I said, this is a pretty easy user interface to navigate, and a lot easier than a 3D model. And this allows us to select sort of the best locations and views for a user to interact. So we can go inside the torch and we can even climb down the ladder. So this is a space that isn't open to the public, so this allows them to gain some sort of access to it, at least virtually. And we can add contextual information to that. You can navigate through the map or hotspots directly on the panos. It links out to models and the park website. So it's a great place to organize all our data as well. So the next thing is close range photogrammetry. And I guess if I was gonna, the simplest explanation for photogrammetry is sort of being able to create 3D geometry just with photographs. So we can make those same 3D models with photographs. If they're taken in a particular way with a particular sensor, they can be as accurate or more accurate than the laser scan data. So this slide is just a photograph. I just decided to do a photogrammetry project of our photogrammetry equipment. So this is typically what we bring in the field. It's definitely lighter weight. It's less expensive than laser scanning, but it's not always appropriate for all the structures that we do. So the top left, you have just a flat image of all the equipment, and the bottom left is some of the images that I took to make up the model. In the top right, you see a lot of these blue rectangles. Those are, the software plots out where each photograph was taken in space. So you can see that it's, every blue rectangle represents the location of the camera when the shot was taken. And then on the bottom there is just a perspective view of that, and the rectangles are replaced with the photos themselves. Cameras. So I don't want to get too technical with it, but their equipment does matter. And there's two types of shutters that really impact photogrammetry. The mechanical shutter is the best shutter that we're looking for, and that exposes the sensor all at once. So that square there represents the sensor, and it's getting exposed all at once. The rolling shutter, it's electronic, so it's just activating the sensor line by line, top to bottom in this example. Now what happens in a rolling shutter is if the camera moves between the time that it fires that top line and the bottom, you get distortion. And it's very hard for photogrammetry software to undo that distortion. And another one, I tried to compress this as much as I can, but there's a lot of settings that impact photogrammetry. And it's kind of easy just to think about two of the concepts to get good photogrammetric projects. And one is you need to resolve the relationship. You don't have to do the calculation yourself, but the software needs to resolve the lens sensor relationship. Exactly how are they, what is the distance, X, Y, and Z coordinates, very precisely. And there's a lot of settings on your camera out of the blocks that are gonna impact that. So you have autofocus, a lot of cameras have image stabilization, and then a variable aperture as well. And then you need to be able to match, it's trying to find similar pixels between photos. So any settings you have on your camera that interfere with that need to be disabled. So we talked about electronic shutter, the high ISO, that's film speed. So you get a lot of grainy images. That's going to be a problem. And most cameras, especially your smartphone camera, has a lot of filters on it, just in a normal automatic mode where it's trying to reduce that noise. It might be compressing different areas, or it has vivid settings or HDR. Those are all problems you're going to have if you're trying to do accurate photogrammetry. So we have some sensors here. And I'm sure some of you could guess which ones are good and which ones aren't by now. But the DSLR generally, depending on how it's being used, could be a great sensor for photogrammetry. Some point and shoots work pretty well. The Hello Kitty would be awesome for around the town, but probably want to leave it at home when you're doing photogrammetry. GoPro and your smartphone, it is possible to get accurate geometry from these systems. You just have to be a lot more careful with them and know the settings, know the correct settings. And then the drone, I pulled out all the stops for this. It's a question because it can carry a lot of different sensors. So you would have to know what kind of sensor it's carrying. And it also, how well is it reducing the vibration of the propellers? Those will impact how good a model you'll get out of it. Cameras. And then Jarob talked about this. Oh, this time it's more personal. There's tilty and there's shifty. And guess what? No good. We can't have that perspective distortion corrected. That it would not be able to, it doesn't, the software doesn't know how you're changing the relationship between the sensor, the film, and the glass. So it really can't model off of those photos. There's an old-timey camera. So if you have your correct equipment and you got all your settings, it also matters how you're capturing the data in the field. And there's two basic ways of capturing. You have stereo pair or coplanar capture, and that is just keeping your camera sensor parallel to the surface of the wall and overlapping your images by 66%. And really you just need to pace out, look through your viewfinder or look at the screen and pace out. Oh, it's 3 steps to get 66% overlap, and then just take 3 steps and take a shot every time. So you go down the line that way. With convergent or in the round, you're pointing the camera directly at the center of the object. And when you move, you want to keep the camera pointed at the center and get 10 to 15 degrees between each photo. So you would go around the object, and hopefully it's an object you can get around, but you could also resolve it without going full circle. And that's not, you don't need to plot out the degrees on that. It's not that precise. You just walk around the object, figure out, do I have between 24 and 36 photos at the end when I come around full circle? If you do, that's your pacing. And you hold that pacing for the entire project. Cameras. Now I know you're all anxious to see this in action. So Jarob took this photo for y'all, and well, it is what it is.
It's going.
You get your plyometrics in as well as your photogrammetry. But really it is sort of just figure out your pacing, take the shot. Once you figure it out, it's a pretty quick process. Of course, it took a long time to set up the lights. So the other thing, our collection has a lot of black and white images, and it is possible to use film to generate photogrammetry models, except for those photos that were taken with a tilt shift system. But we did have a bunch of aerial photos of the Statue of Liberty. I downloaded those off the Library of Congress website and fed them through our software. And those were able to generate a pretty decent model. Now, they weren't taken with the appropriate capture technique. I didn't have the lens and film information. I couldn't feed that into the software, which that's the kind of stuff that it wants to start with to begin aligning photos. But nonetheless, it did build a pretty robust model. We can expect that when around the front side that we'll have better geometry than we would around the back side, just because we're not getting that 10 to 15 degrees or 66% overlap. And then from that, I built the model, and we can build, and I compared that model to the laser scan data that we had from 2006. And it's not the most accurate photogrammetry project, but it's under 10 centimeters. Some areas are under 1 centimeter accurate, but it does do something that the laser scan data can't do, which we can't get a laser scanner in the air, not a highly accurate one. And so this filled in all the information at the tops of the feet. It got the torch where the scanning couldn't get that, the shoulders, the folds of the robes. And overall, it's almost a more complete model if it's not, maybe it doesn't have as great an accuracy. So just a comparison between the two data sets, Jarob showed some photographs of this entrance. We have the terrestrial laser scan data, or just laser scan data, and its max resolution is going to be between 3 and 5 millimeters. But with the photogrammetry, what we can do is, in theory, the resolution is infinite. I can get a better sensor, or I can get closer to the object and get more resolution. And I only processed half the resolution of the photos that we took, and I still got sub-millimeter resolution on the final product. These are ortho images, which means that they are free from perspective distortion, and they're scalable, and you can extract measurements from them. So unlike a photo, which might have, even Jarob's correcting for perspective, but not all planes of that photograph could you extract accurate dimensional information. With something like an ortho image, you can extract on all the planes all accurate measurements. And actually the ortho mosaic for the photogrammetry is actually built up of, this is probably 1,000 photographs seamed together and undistorted. And I don't know if you guys noticed this, but that's a purple dinosaur. So we can take that ortho mosaic, ortho image, and we can essentially trace it in AutoCAD to make a line drawing. So there's some advantages to turning that into a line drawing, in that we can begin to highlight more of the architectural features, let them bring those to the forefront, and maybe add a little more depth to the drawing. And also a line drawing done in a CAD system, I can scale that infinitely and not lose any resolution. So that's not going to be the case with a raster graphic like a JPEG or a TIP. Now, also, some people would interpret this differently, like this interpretation, which is also a purple dinosaur. So what's great about photogrammetry is they easily go to mesh. And so we can easily host those online through a modern web browser, if it'll open. So this site is called Sketchfab. We have Heritage Documentation Programs has their own sort of set of models that we publish under. So I implore you to take a look at that. There's a lot of different sites there. But this just allows you, like the point cloud viewer, but a little more easy to navigate, and the visual quality is much better. And we can provide more information about the model, and also link to more higher resolution portions to show more of the detail. And I challenge you to the low poly challenge at the isometric room. Good luck. There. Okay. There is a quiz. So I have just 2 questions, and you don't have to put it in the chat or anything like that. This is honor system. And so hold that in your head, and we'll see how you do with the quiz. So the first question is, how many cameras are in the presentation, and I'll give you a few seconds to think about that. So you're probably wondering why I was pointing out all the cameras. Well, this is why. All right. All right, none. There are only pictures of cameras in the presentation. So if you got that correct, email Jarob. He'll send you a certificate of professional photography and you can get to work. 2 is how many cats are in the presentation. I want you to think hard on this. All right. 1. Clip art counts in this case, so I don't make the rules. Thank you. Any questions?
That was great. Good quiz. Did not get the first question right myself. I did know there was one cat, though. You can't forget that.
Some people get confused by that first one, so.
Yeah. No, that was good. Yeah, so that was really wonderful, you guys. And we do have a couple of questions that I'll read, and we see what we get. And we'll see if we get any more. So first, we have Anne, who said that you guys did a really great job. So thank you, Anne, for those kind words. And she said, any special tips regarding just using a phone camera for catching our architectural pictures? I guess, you know, for our members or audience who just like to walk around taking their own photos. Do you guys have any like special tips?
So I'm not a very good person to ask on this because I actually have Lightroom right on my phone. So any photos I take, I'm instantly in there editing them right away and like tweaking everything. So, I mean, from that standpoint, I would say like always try to make sure your phone is always straight, like up and down against like, so that here's the wall, here's your phone. Make sure they're always parallel to one another because that's what creates the distortion. So if you hold it straight, but if you can't and you have Lightroom on your phone, you just back up a little bit and tilt that baby back, and then you can fix it in post-production. There's an automatic perspective correction, and also one of the really cool things about phones is the HDR function on it. I know Paul said that that's like no good for anything that he's doing, and we can't do it for the photography that I'm doing. But for just doing everyday photos, I mean, it's amazing, and especially when you learn how to dial. Like if you see you got this photo, the HDR, you have it turned on, you can click on the sky, darken the frame, take the photo, and the up frame will give you a perfectly exposed image every time. Just about. I've taken photos I took a photo of Manhattan from the boat going over to or coming back from. Ellis Island at night, and it turned out perfect. Phones are great.
Yeah, I would say to, you know, low light situations are where phones aren't going to be the best, and HDR functions are great. But if you can stabilize the phone, you're going to get a better image. And the one thing you know, everybody does this. I hand my camera to somebody. Come on, can you take a picture of us? You know, and I notice when people take a picture of me, they're not looking at the screen. They're not looking at the frame of the image, what is in there. So like they're cutting people off or the building behind, and it just takes some time to look at the entire screen and compose the shot. And be as steady as you can when you take the shot, whether handheld, if you have a tripod. You know, I carry around a special mount. I don't always have a tripod, but I carry around a special mount that I can set my phone onto something and take a picture as well. And if you can stabilize the camera, then all that software inside the camera that's sort of trying to correct for all this mistakes you're making, it doesn't have to work so hard, and you get a better photo in the end.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking on that, the positioning. Yes, always make sure like knowing what's in the frame, because nothing will get me more mad than the pole coming right out of my head, like or something like that. And I mean, the same goes with architecture too. I mean, when you're looking at it, like, you know, you got street posts with lights hanging out and everything. And it's all really confusing when you first start doing it. But as you do it more, you understand that getting lower and moving in changes the relationship of stuff, or going back and up. All these different positions change the relationship of objects within a frame and can lead to a more readable image if you really pay attention to it.
Definitely tap that screen where you want the exposure.
Yes.
Otherwise, it looks at the sky and it's like, oh, and then all the people in front or the building is underexposed. So just make sure you're focused on the building. Just tap the screen. Most phones work that way, and it'll expose for the building.
Great. Very good. Okay, so Greg from Facebook asked, what does Jarob feel the challenges are going to be in knowing that the HABS volunteers out there don't have the financial resources to upgrade things, and like the 100 MPX backs and digital technical cameras to submit photos? Won't that be limiting the collection overall looking forward?
So that's the reason why we have the lower tier 40 megapixel system, because that's basically like a pro level camera for producing high resolution, low noise, high dynamic range images. They're not HDR images, but the amount of data that those sensors can capture is extreme. And the amount of data that you're pulling out of shadow areas while retaining information in the highlights areas it's second to none, these cameras that are coming out now. And there's been a lot of talk going back and forth about it, and that was where we settled on for now. And I mean, that camera, which, to be perfectly honest, because Paul has the next camera up from that, the R4, right?
Yeah.
And based on everything that I've heard and I know about that, I would still buy the camera that we have, which is the R3, because it's less megapixels, less noise. It's just the way photography is.
Well, and we're still we're only accepting film at the moment, and we don't plan to stop accepting film.
Exactly.
So, none of this is set in stone yet. Everything's in testing, but definitely having an entry level, 150, 100 megapixel back is not possible for most people.
What we're talking about here and the difference is, like, 100 megapixel back, we understand that is like just the digital back itself, no lenses and everything, is $50,000. We understand this, and we're not going to tell everybody out there that doing this on their own that they have to go buy that. That's unreasonable. So, but the other systems are more in line with what it would have cost you to buy a large format system back when film was king, when film was ruling the show. But like Paul said, we're not ready to accept any of this from the public. We haven't even released any of our draft guidelines to the public or anything. We are still in the very early stages of this, and we're taking our time with it to make sure that it's right once we do go forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's great to know. So thank you for that. Okay, so Dan from Facebook, he asked, is there a danger of creating an artificial sense of image and color density because of the relatively higher dynamic response of digital sensors versus film? So, as an example, creating images that appear to have an unnatural HDR appearance, or might the standards be expanded to take advantage of such manipulation?
So I know that Paul will definitely use HDR.
Yeah.
See, the reason why we're not doing it in the photography department in terms of doing that is because when you put photos into an HDR processor of some sort, they usually remove artifacts, removing certain things. Like I've had it where it's remove light posts when I was doing commercial stuff where it's just like, oh, I don't like this light post. It's gone. Well, what? See, so that kind of auto removal of objects in a scene that's supposed to be a historic record of something, a true historic record of that location at that time. We just can't trust HDR with all the tools that are there, and there's no way to tell if those files were really manipulated. It's really easy to bypass. So I got to look at it more. I know I do, because there's other things that I want to look at doing in terms of like using focus stacking for close-up photos, because we'd be able to extract way more data than we ever were able to with film using that technique. But these are just things that we, right now it's a no, but we'll look at it going forward.
Yeah, I'll just say there's so many variables in the software and what you choose and how much you push it. I don't know that I'm comfortable really having what Jarob does and what I do are two different things. So I like the pureness of what Jarob's doing, and it's trying to replicate what I would see. I know, I don't have the dynamic range, the same dynamic range the sensor doesn't as my eye, but at the same time, the variables in the software, it depends on what button I push, what it's going to look like. And keeping track of all of those, we would want to know all that information if it were to be submitted to us, and keeping track of all that. Mostly these are proprietary softwares, and they're doing all these things behind the curtain, so we don't know exactly what they're doing. We should think about it for sure, but I think for now it's not on the table.
Well, and as far as the color is concerned, because that was part of the question too, right? Color. Yeah, as far as that's concerned, in the draft guidelines that we've got that we're going off of right now, there's a whole section that touches on color and how to approach color. I understand, like, some people say that even the high dynamic sensors have a more saturated look to them, but if you set up your camera right and you turn off a lot of the functions in your camera that it comes pre-packaged with, you go into those settings and you turn them off, which the guidelines completely outline. So it'll tell you exactly how to set up the camera and everything to make sure that you're getting neutral colors, not overly saturated, punchy colors. And when that data comes into us, as I foresee it happening, we will be going into the metadata. We will receive a raw file so that we can check all this stuff and make sure that people are not giving us fraudulent data, we'll call it, I guess.
All right, so a couple more questions. Any tips for documenting and photographing derelict historic structures? I don't know if you all know what that is.
Bring derelict?
Yeah, sorry, that might have been just me not knowing how to read. Yeah, sorry.
Well, bring lights if you can.
That's what I was going to say. Lights. The other thing is too, because actually I started when I was doing photos leading up to this job, I spent most of my time photographing Gary, Indiana, which is all derelict buildings. And not every single building you can get lights into there. It just isn't the case. I mean, I took them in whenever I could. The key is, if you're in the north, photograph in the winter. When that snow hits the ground, be out photographing, because all that light coming through the sky hits off that snow and bounces right back into the windows and just lights up all the ceiling space. You just got to find the right angles, and you got to plan it all out accordingly, like know where the sun is moving, what it's going to be hitting, where that light's going to be coming in, and what angle inside that space is the good one. And you can just move through a building, chunking your way through, just following the light.
We'll tell them about the overnight exposures as well, Jarob.
Well, there is that too. Yeah, there is that too. If you're using film and you can just set it up. Well, I still used flash on that shot though. I did use flash, but yeah, you can set it up overnight and just do a 8-hour exposure. It won't hurt. You won't overexpose it. I promise you.
It did look beautiful.
Okay, and another question, do you see any benefit using using a panoramic motorized camera?
We do have some panorama, a motorized panorama thing, and I didn't talk about it. It's sort of more advanced. You can do photogrammetry with panorama. Really, if you're taking a lot of shots, it makes a lot of sense, but we're using the widest fisheye with the highest megapixel sensor, so we can take as few photos as possible. And I just don't want to lug around another piece of equipment. So generally we're not using that unless they're basically gigapans for photogrammetry, and that's where you're taking hundreds of overlapping shots. But most of our shots are with a fisheye, and it's just 6 positions, and it takes less than a minute. So.
Great. And then we just have one last question before we have to start wrapping things up. But Warren wants to know, what are you going to do about including color check swatches in images?
So as it regards to that, because it's easy to say put a color swatch up in front of something and say, okay, cool, it's there, now I can go and click it. It doesn't really work like that in these situations, because you're talking about a lot of mixed light situations where you got red light mixing with blue light, mixing with dingy green light. And I mean, it really depends too. Like the way that I look at it, the way that I view it is the photograph you're taking require that level of color accuracy? And I mean, that's up to the person taking the photograph. That's the whole thing. There's times when I use color swatches in photographs, but that's on a case-by-case basis. It's not every single photograph. Like, you go out to a scene and it's a sunrise, the light is red. If you color correct for that light and put a swatch up, that's going to look kind of crazy. It's going to be a blue light sunrise. It just doesn't look right when you got these shadows streaking across in white light. So it's really a case-by-case basis. And the guidelines do touch on that a bit in terms of using color checkers. It's really on the photographer to determine when that level of color accuracy is needed, because it can be a pain.
Great. So real quick, everybody, I'm just putting in some links into the chat. One is for the HDP website. There's just the general website, the virtual tours and exhibits that you'll have on the website, and then the online collections at the Library of Congress. So those are all in there. And I just want to say thank you guys so much. First of all, special thank you to our wonderful presenters, Jarob and Paul. I learned so much today, and I'm sure everybody else did who watched. It was a really great, really great presentation. And thank you to our audience for taking time out of your day to learn about this very important subject. And again, if you have any additional questions that maybe we didn't get to today, or if you just think of something after the fact, please feel free to email us at info@dcpreservation.org. You can also stay up to date with other upcoming events that we're planning on our website at www.dcpreservation.org, also in the chat room. And again, we just hope that you all enjoy the rest of your day, and please let us know if you have any other questions. And thank you again so much, Jarob and Paul, for sharing your expertise with us.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Melissa.